My folks came over from the Philippines actually, and started off in Buffalo, and then came over to Washington, and we were pretty much the only like Filipino family there, let alone even like Asian American family there. There was this element of, hey boy, you know what I mean, like terms where you were definitely talked down to. For me, it was more of a struggle just in self confidence. Growing up a chubby kid and things like that. Those are things that the racism stuff I didn't pick up on until like when I was a little older. So I was the shortest kid too, like not developing quite as quickly or not same point developmentally as other kids in my class. Um, but yeah, I was really into baseball and I really wanted to be a professional baseball player at first, but I just didn't really have the athletic talent for that, at least from the beginning. I mean, Hulk Hogan was huge for me. Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, like those were the guys that I was really really into.
So,
That's
so
the larger than life aspect of it. I loved it. And then when everybody quote unquote matures out of pro wrestling because it's fake, I was still into it, and I never figured out why, but I just was always entertained. And then I found out later on, figured out the art behind it. But yeah, I just stuck around with it. I wasn't really thriving, early teens at least, wasn't really thriving in sports, even though I absolutely love sports. Had, some body image issues, things like that. So I wasn't really feeling too great about myself overall. Didn't really put myself out there as much as as I would now. I didn't have the confidence to, speak up to people and things like that. But I also wasn't a complete pushover either. I started playing football in fifth grade, and I was actually pretty good at it because, it's one of those sports where you don't have to necessarily be super fast and athletic to be good at because you get put into different roles. I was good doing the dirty work as an offensive lineman, and played all the way through high school. And I was pretty good. It's obviously I couldn't move on to college because I was 5'10", 190. Got cut from the basketball team like I want to say 2 or 3 years in a row. I tried it out in eighth grade, got pinned every single time I was out there, and then I transferred schools my ninth grade year, and one of my friends, his dad was a wrestling coach, and they kind of implied that, hey, you're going to wrestle as soon as if you don't make the basketball team, right? I got in there in my ninth grade year and got my ass kicked again. But I think, I'm not sure what had me sticking to it that year or even beyond, or what made me want to do it another year. Maybe it's just because, I saw my coach pretty often, and he ended up being a pretty major influence on my life. Yeah, I mean, I stuck with it, and then all of a sudden, you hit a growth spurt, you start becoming a little more coordinated. The sport starts to make a lot more sense. Just the movements that don't seem as natural suddenly do. And so I started to have a little more success within the sport. It's a sport that teaches you, how to be a man, really, because it's the one sport, at least in high school, where you're out there by yourself and you're doing battle, you know what I mean, in front of everybody. And, well, in front of everybody, like 20 people in the crowd, but you get put into check. And so it really did teach me, work ethic. It taught me the how powerful of an experience it is to just stick to something and then succeed from it, and that was the biggest thing was those two things, the work ethic and just being able to stick through adversity. Like I'm on my back and everybody's like stomping their feet and surviving those moments, and then sometimes coming back to win. It was really the first time that I had those triumphs was through wrestling. Well, the first time I saw it was in, I think, 1994. My brother rented UFC 2. And I was like, as a kid, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's like Bloodsport come to life. It really drew me back in initially to the sport. It wasn't even tough one, but it was when Hoist came back to fight Matt Hughes. And so, once I started seeing some highlights of, even I think it was even just a little before that fight. I think it was like Carlos Newton, guys like that, seeing them, how they used wrestling within a fight. I was like, you know what, that looks cool. I can do something with my wrestling and learn more from it. So, or expand off of it, learn other techniques, learn other things. And so once I saw the fight between Hoist and Matt Hughes, I started watching more and more UFC, and I'm just like, you know what, I want to give this a try. I'm 2006, so I was like 23, going on 24. First of all, what really pushed me to compete was when I went to the last Pride show in Vegas when Nick Diaz and Gomi fought, and Vanderlei and Hendo. And that event just pretty much pushed it over the top for me, where I'm like, like I'm getting this kind of a rush being in the crowd. Imagine what it would be like being out there. And so I knew I had to start, if I wanted to do something with this, I had to do it then, and so I went over to Ivan school, thinking that it was just going to be like some grappling competitions and I'd go off to grad school. Lo and behold, I get accepted into grad school here at the UW, sticking around in Seattle. I fight my first MMA fight as I'm doing grad school interviews, and I was, completely hooked from there. Deep down, I was still, bothered by the way my high school career, wrestling career ended. It was a pretty bitter pill to swallow. I lost by a point to go to the medal rounds, and for me that was huge, just because, going from somebody who hadn't won a match for 2 years to that. So I definitely, there was an ego side of me that I wasn't acknowledging, that I wanted the glory part of it. But on the surface, I probably was scared too. I didn't know if I could hang or if I could take, being kicked and punched and all those things. So initially, I just trained to train. And I was at a place that really just trained to train. It was more of a martial arts school. Did a fantastic job of doing the basics, but not competition oriented at all. It was humbling in the sense that I wasn't, in striking wise at least, that I wasn't good at it. You know, it took me a while to accept that, I'm going to have to start in square one in certain areas. I'd go back to wrestling right away because that was what I was good at. As far as the work that went into it, I kind of already knew. I mean, wrestling really prepared me for that. The long hours, the dedication, the lumps that you're going to take. Eddie Bravo did a seminar over at our school, and his words like really just had a major influence on me. Is like, if you know you're better than the guy, like, why not put yourself into bad positions? Why not work on the stuff that you're not good at, rather than just stick with what you're comfortable with? And that's how really I approach my training from then on. Why do you fight? There is a bit of an adrenaline / like addictive quality to it. Like there's a rush to it that is completely incomparable. And I think Chael Sonnen has even talked about, like, you get a little bit of a fight hangover afterwards because you have such a high, win or lose, and then a few days after it's kind of back to regular life. It can't even compare. And I just kept going with it, and I kept on having success that I was initially surprised to have. But I was just like, hey, let's ride this for as long as we can. So I didn't feel the pressure. I was super excited, and I think that's one of my strengths as a fighter, is responding to the big game situations. Obviously, I haven't been on the biggest stage, but I'm somebody who rises to the occasion. I do even well beyond what you see in training, just because I know how to prepare myself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all that. I would say that most people are very surprised that I fight. If they're ones that don't understand like sports, you know what I mean? Like if they know that I wrestled in the past, it makes perfect sense to them. Like my appearance isn't one that's very, what's that word I'm looking for? Imposing. I don't look like a very intimidating guy for the most part. It kind of depends on who you talk to and what kind of mood I'm in, I guess. But I think that they see me as like a super nice guy. They're just like, I can't even imagine you, going out there and trying to, beat someone up or somebody beating you up. I think I would get scared. And so it does bring surprise, I think, to most people. But then once they do know, that's what they know me by. They don't know me as, Andy, the grad student in psychology who might, be a good therapist or researcher or scientist. They know me as the guy who does MMA fights. And even if I only fight once or twice a year, they ask me, hey, when's the next fight? However, it's a little different now in the sense that, I think back then, it was more ego driven. It was one where I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to show people that I'm better than them in some way, as if like, fighting MMA fights, like, made me a better person. And that's definitely not the case now. I'm a lot more at ease with, being one of the crowd, because when you put yourself on a place where, you think you're higher than people or you're lower than people, either way, you're alone. You don't have the people to share that with. It was definitely like The rewarding experiences that I had from high school sports, I was missing that for about 7 years, and didn't have purpose or meaning. And fighting gave me meaning. It gave me direction, gave me something to work towards. It gave me an identity. It became very much a part of who I was. Like it was the center of who I was, really. And like I was just saying, like it was pretty much all I talked about. So it very much like just was everything for a while. And then as I got older, as I got into graduate school, I had to figure out how to integrate fighting into my life and still fit it in. Still, it was still probably more important to me than school was initially. I was, maybe that had to do with some of the success I was having as well. But it was gradually as I've gotten older, I've acknowledged on one. It's weird because I used to just say wins and losses don't matter and stuff like that, and I still believe that to some degree, but I also did never acknowledge that. Hey, I still want something from this. I've had dreams of being on these big stages in any sport since I was a kid. Guys hit the peak of their technique when they're far beyond their fighting years. You know what I mean? They might not have the same like strength and speed as they did before, but they've just grown wiser and wiser over the years. And that's what I see this being for myself is that, you know, um, I won't say that, hey, I wish I was younger, I totally kick somebody's ass now, but it's that, it's that constant evolution. That's to me what I'm less and less of like a competitive fighter now and more of a martial artist. The thing that I love about it is that there's that constant development. There's always room for improvement, and that doesn't necessarily mean being a perfectionist. It's just there's just so much knowledge to be had, and I know that I can't have it all when I even by the time I'm dead, but it's that what was that term I heard? Growth mindset. That you're constantly open-minded to new experiences, in martial arts, I guess, new techniques, things of that nature. So I see that how it's what it's going to play in that, and also just in sharing that with other people. You know what I mean? It's very much what happens in the gym is very analogous to what happens in the academic setting. You know what I mean? Academic setting, you have ideas, you share them with other people, and you bounce ideas off of one another, and you might collaborate on a research project or something like that. But something better comes out of that, and that's true of martial arts as well. Um, hmm. It's funny because if you asked me that question maybe a year and a half ago, I would have listed out all my accomplishments. You know what I mean? And that would be like, all right, blah blah blah, degree here, this fight, this fight, this fight. And I think at this right now, I'm most proud of not only the person that I've become, but the people I share it with. And still have a good relationship with my parents and my brothers and my family because I know not everybody has that. I'm proud of the fact that I have a loving fiance and who's there to support me and who, has, achieved so much on her own. And I'm proud of the fact that I get to be around like some really brilliant people in different fields. I'm at a world class research institution where there's some very brilliant minds, not just at the faculty level, but at the student level. That's a pleasure. That is awesome. Like, and seeing kids, start to develop like their own independent thinking, like that's really cool. And then in the fight game, people who are geniuses in not only just in fighting, but just in the way that they approach life. I mean, just to have those opportunities to just to be around like such brilliant and amazing people, like that's the thing that's most important to me now. I think things that are important to me now are, I guess it would be somebody who is very compassionate, somebody who cares for his friends and family and really just wants to help others in some way. That to me is what really defines me at this point is just not just friends and family, but just trying to make the world, I guess, a better place. That's what I'm hoping. That's very idealistic, but as a young academic in psychology or some other similar field, like I'm just trying to do what I can to make the world a better place.